To a lot of people, passive income is a dream. The dream of being able to make money while traveling the world, while you sleep, and ultimately doing nothing is something that I think every single person could say that they would enjoy in their life. However, the majority of people do not understand that with creating these passive income sources, a lot of work goes into them. A lot of research, a lot of time, a lot of effort. However, a lot of the times when these passive income sources are up and running, they are pretty easy to maintain, and a lot of the times they can even scale into something great that you never even thought was possible. Now, let me just start off this video by saying I don't think there's any true passive income source in my opinion. With everything that we're gonna talk about on this list and all these passive income sources, it's going to be some sort of work that's going to be required in order for this passive income source to be super successful. Whether this is through investing or whether this is through starting a business, you're gonna find that you are putting in a lot of effort up front, and it might just seem like it's not even worth it because you're putting in all these hours, you're putting in all this time, but you're really not seeing any gain in return, and you really feel like you're being, I guess, undercompensated, you would say. But as time goes on and as this passive income source really starts to get up and running, you're gonna find out that it's definitely worth it, and you might even find yourself being overcompensated. But anyway, in this video, I'm gonna be talking about 5 passive income sources, and in these passive income sources, I'm gonna be talking about how hard I think these passive income sources are to start, how hard it is to make $100 off of this passive income source, how hard I think it is to sustain this income, and some of the downsides I see with these passive income sources. As always, if you guys enjoy this content, I thought this was a better scenic view than the whiteboard or going somewhere else for this type of video. But if you do enjoy it, please drop a like on the video, make sure to subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. The first item on this list, the first passive income source on this list that we're gonna talk about, and this is going to be more of the obvious one, but I kind of wanted to get the obvious one out of the way early so we can move more into the creative ones, I guess you could say. But the first one up on this list is investing in the stock market. Now, obviously, investing in the stock market, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You can invest actively, you can invest passively, or you can invest with some combination of both. Obviously, this video is about passive income, so we are going to focus more on the passive side of investing in the stock market, but we are going to briefly talk about the active side of it as well. Active investing in the stock market revolves around picking individual stock. It's as simple as that. This is what I do personally, but you also have to remember that a lot of work comes with it as well. You have to be willing to read the 10Ks, read the 10Qs, listen to the conference call, keep up to date with the companies that you are investing in on not so much a day-to-day basis, but a week-to-week basis at the very least, in my opinion. For most people, I really don't feel like this is the best idea because I feel like most people don't have the discipline to keep up with their companies on a week-to-week basis. I think it's much better for more people to take the passive investing route, which is more of a set it and forget it type of investing method. Which brings me to the main point I want to focus on here, which is investing passively. Now, when most people invest passively, they generally invest in some sort of total stock market index fund or maybe S&P 500 fund. And if you go back over the course of many, many years, the S&P 500, just putting money into that, has averaged about a 10% return. Obviously, it's not going to be positive every single year. Some years it is going to be negative, some years it's going to be greater than 10%. But if you take the total average over the last 100 years or so, it does come out to an average of a 10% return. In other words, if this really does not make sense still, say you put $1,000 into an S&P 500 index fund, well, based off of the 10% return average, you can expect that $1,000 to grow into $1,100 over the course of a year. Now, like I just said, this might not happen every single year. That $1,000 could turn into $800 one year, essentially, if there's some sort of correction or recession. But the general rule of thumb, if you leave that money there, it will grow on average 10% year over year over year. And the longer you leave it there and the longer you contribute to it, the more you are going to be taking advantage of compound interest, which, as we know, is the 8th wonder of the world. I personally think this is probably one of the best investing methods for the average person out there because there's really not a ton of work that needs to go into it. And I think even if you don't have a high income or maybe you don't have a lot of money, just by chipping away and putting little money in every single week, every single month, you're going to become very wealthy and you don't really have to do a ton to do it. Now, as for how difficult this is to start, this is going to be the easiest one on this list, and I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5 stars, mainly because anyone can start investing at the stock market at really any time, assuming the market is obviously open. But you can literally go on Google and just type in best brokerages to invest in stocks or something like that, something along those lines. And whether it's Fidelity, Vanguard, Webull, or even the almighty Robinhood, it doesn't matter. Anyone can start investing at really any time they want to. As for how easy it is to make $100 a month with this sort of passive income, I'm also going to give this a 1 out of 5 stars, mainly because anyone can just start putting money in an S&P 500 index fund, and as time time goes on, as the market continues to go up over the course of the long term, you are going to make money off it, and chances are you're going to make much more than $100 in my personal opinion. As for how sustainable this is to make $100 a month off of every single month, this one's honestly a little bit more up in the air, mainly because, as we know, as I just talked about, the stock market's going to go up an average of 10% every single year. But along the same line, you don't know what the market's going to do from month to month, and honestly, you don't know what the market's going to do from year to year. Although some years you might see a 20-25% gain from the S&P 500, some years you might see a negative 5% return. But keep in mind, with the stock market, you're generally not looking too much in the short term unless you're some sort of day trader or swing trader and you're just trying to get in and out of stocks, in and out of the market very quickly and just make quick money. You mainly just want to buy and hold those bags, hold those diamonds, and watch your money continue to make you money. But for this case scenario, I'm just going to split the difference here, and I'm going to give this a 2.5 out of 5 stars, mainly because, as I just mentioned, I don't know where the market's going to go in the short term or over the course of a couple of years, but over the long term, based on what we have for historical data, the market has always gone up with an average of a 10% gain over the long term. So just because maybe you can't make $100 every single month from the stock market does not mean you cannot see great gains and see massive wealth increase over the course of many, many years. Also remember that I am no sort of financial advisor at all, and this is not any financial advice in any way, shape, or form. As for the downsides that I see that come with investing in the stock market and creating a passive income source this way, I personally think that the biggest downside is that I personally would not treat this as a main income source. Now, what I mean by that is, with other things that we're going to talk about on this list, a lot of those things that you can probably start and maybe even scale them and eventually just do that full time, and you can leave your full-time job and just focus on your other business ventures. But with investing in the stock market, when you're investing full-time for long-term gains, it's different if you're a swing trader or a day trader and you're just trying to get out of money, or in and out of stocks rather, and then you can just pocket that money and deposit that money into your bank account or wherever it needs to be, bills. But when you're investing for the long term, you really don't want to think about having to pull money out of those assets, because you just want to hold those bags, hold those diamonds for as long as you possibly can. But remember, your goal with the stock market is to turn your money into more money. And if you're investing full time, then you have no money coming in, so you can't turn that money into more money. Now, in addition to that, let's say that maybe the market goes down one year. There's a recession, there's a virus that breaks out, and everyone can't leave their house and money velocity is completely shut off. What exactly do you do? Because you are at the mercy of the market. How do you pay the mortgage? How do you pay the water bill? How do you pay for little Johnny's basketball tournament? How do you do that if you have no money coming in? Then you're gonna have to start pulling money out of your stock market account. Then you're gonna have to pay taxes. So basically, the point I'm trying to make here is I think investing in the stock market is absolutely phenomenal to build wealth. I have seen it many, 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 many times from many, many different people. But at the same time, I don't think it should be treated as a primary income source to, say, support a family or even yourself for that matter. So if you are someone who's investing full time from a long-term perspective and you're not a day trader or a swing trader, or maybe you're thinking about quitting your job just to invest full time, I would say take a deep dive into it, take a step back, devise a plan, and say to yourself, all right, if the market goes down, how am I going to pay my bills? What am I going to do? Where am I going to get my money from? If the market goes down, am I going to have to pull money out of my account? What is the deal? Just lay out a very well-informed plan. Again, not financial advice. The second passive income idea on this list is starting a podcast, which you might see from me very, very soon if you haven't already. Now, obviously, a podcast is another passive income source that isn't exactly passive. You're gonna have to spend time organizing and planning out what you're gonna talk about in your podcast. You're also gonna have to plan out if you're gonna have guests, and there's also gonna be several other learning curves that come with this venture. But it can be very easy to start a podcast once you have everything planned out, and it really does not take a ton of equipment at all. In fact, if you really wanted to, you could record your podcast right through your computer audio. I don't know if I would recommend that over time for a very high quality podcast, but if you're really on a tight budget, you can definitely start by doing that and then over time upgrade as you get more money. However, what I would recommend when starting a podcast is 2 microphones, one for you, one for a guest if you think that's a possibility, and a camera so that you can provide video with your podcast and maybe even post it on YouTube as well. That's the bare minimum that I would recommend. You might also want to consider getting some lights for some better video quality, but you can also color grade that yourself and make it look a little bit better if you need to. I personally think starting a podcast is something that's going to be great. It's fun, it's something that's very easy to start, and it's not something that requires a lot of upfront capital, and I think it's just a great way to network, especially if you're first starting your business. I also think it's a great way to kind of come out of your comfort zone and maybe talk to people that you're not overly familiar with, that you don't know very well, and I think this is going to be great, especially if you're naturally introverted. As for how hard this is to start, if you couldn't already tell, I'm going to give this a 1 out of 5 stars because of all the reasons I just said. It doesn't cost a lot of capital up front. It really doesn't take much to get it going once you have everything planned out, and you can order 2 microphones and a camera from Mr. Bezos, and they have that right at your doorstep within a day. Guys! As for how hard this is to make $100 off of a month, I would say that this is more of a 3 out of 5 stars. Now, why do I think this is more on the difficult side? Well, there isn't really an algorithm when it comes to podcasts, which means it can be a little bit harder to push out your podcast and get more people to see it, which is why I recommended getting a camera, and maybe you can upload it to YouTube so that way there is a platform with an algorithm that can push that out to more people. For example, when you go on YouTube and you see all these videos on your front page, these are all the videos that the YouTube algorithm is pushing out to you based off of what you usually watch, what you like, all of those different things. However, with a podcast, these don't necessarily exist, or they're not as big, and it can be much harder to grow, like I just said, and mainly your podcast kind of grows through word of mouth or networking, which could take a little bit more time. This is also a reason I think it's great to have guests on your podcast, because then you can both benefit from the collaboration. Now you might be wondering, how do podcasts make money? Obviously with YouTube, you make money from Google AdSense if you upload your podcast in a video form, but on Spotify and Apple Music, that's not really a thing, which means the easiest way to make money when it comes to podcasts is sponsors. And sponsors usually pay based off cost per meal or cost per mile. I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but CPM, which in other words means cost per thousand. So obviously this could take a little while, especially if you are first just getting started, to see $100 come in. However, once this is up and running and you do start to see consistent downloads, you do start to see consistent subscribers, everything really is flowing on all cylinders. I personally think it's very easy to maintain, and the sponsors just continue to come in. So in saying that, I would say that I would give this a 1 out of 5 to sustain that $100 of passive income every single month. As for the difficulties I really see with starting this, obviously, as they've already mentioned, the algorithm is a big factor. It can be very difficult for a lot of people. But on the same note, I would just say being a little awkward. Like for example, like look at me, when I first started filming videos, I was nowhere near comfortable in talking to a camera or anything like that. Now, a lot of times I can just turn on a camera and just start rambling, and it really doesn't bother me. But it is very, very weird at first. There's definitely a little bit of a learning curve talking to a microphone, talking to a camera. It's just a different scene that a lot of people aren't used to. Even some of the people that I've asked to come on my podcast, a lot of them have a lot of good information. They're very knowledgeable. They could help a lot of people. But the thing is, they're not comfortable talking to a camera. They're not comfortable being in a scene where they're talking to a microphone. So it's a little bit more difficult to just put someone in that situation like that. And your podcast probably isn't going to be very good to start, but the important thing to remember is that you're going to get better with it over time, and just keep doing it. But yeah, I think it's a great idea to start, and I think it can be a great passive income source. The third example of some sort of passive income source that you can start that we're going to be talking about in this video is building some sort of community. So this can be described as more so like a Discord chat or a Patreon page. As you guys know, as I've talked about before, you guys know I'm in Jeremy's private stock group, which I do recommend. I feel like I've learned a lot from it. I feel like I've become a better investor. I feel like a lot of great things have come out of it, but that would be one example of building a community. Now, right off the back, let me just say, if you're starting this and you have no following, but you have this idea, you're like, I really want to build a community of investors, I really want to build a community of filmmakers, whatever the case may be, whatever community you are trying to build, it's a very bad idea if you do not already have a following, in my personal opinion. If you don't have a following, if you don't have an audience, then chances are people are not gonna know who you are. So if people don't know who you are and they don't know anything about you, you have no content out there, you don't have anything else people really, I guess, consume or know anything about you at all, why would they decide to part with their money to give it to you? But let's say for the sake of this that you do already have a following. Maybe you have a successful YouTube channel, maybe you've put out several successful Instagram pages, maybe you were just on TikTok, whatever the case may be. I think this is a really, really good idea. First reason I think this is a good idea because it's a recurring revenue business model, which, as we've talked about in so many of these stock analysis videos that I make, I love that business model. In other words, let's say you charge $9.99 a month for someone to be in that Discord chat. You know that that person, that subscriber, is going to pay you $9.99 every single month until they cancel their membership. Second, I think that even if you are running the Discord or the Patreon, whatever you are doing, whatever you are creating, whatever community you are building, I think it's a great way for you to be around like-minded people and really begin to gain knowledge and gain other things from those people that are paying to be in your your service. For example, Jeremy talks about all the time in the Discord chat that he gets 75% or so of his stock picks from the Discord chat that I am in, and it's just regular people like me. So he built that community and he gains something, he gains value out of it, he gains stock picks from it or stock ideas from it that he can go and research and eventually invest into. But you also have to remember, like I said earlier in this bit, this can be difficult to create if you don't already have the following. So in saying that, I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5 stars to start. Again, assuming you have no following at all. However, if you do have the following built already, you do have content out there, you do have people really vouching for you, you have testimonials, I'm gonna give this a 1 out of 5 stars to start. Again, assuming that you already have the following, you already have that audience built. But you have to remember, if you're gonna build this community, you're gonna start this Discord chat, you're gonna start this Patreon page, you have to remember that you have to consistently bring enough value to people for them to want to part with their hard-earned money and give it to you so they can continue to be a part of that service. Here's the way I look at it. Money is an exchange for value. For example, let's say someone's not feeling well and they want to be diagnosed on what's wrong with them. They have two options. They can either pay a doctor $300 or they can pay me $300. Which one is more likely for them to do? Obviously, they're more likely to pay the doctor $300 because that doctor is more medically qualified than I am. In other words, that person is going to get more value of spending $300 on a doctor, just for this example, as opposed to giving me $300, someone who is in no way medically qualified, or a financial advisor. And the same thing I personally believe applies to these Discord chats and Patreon pages. If you're not giving enough value, if you're not providing enough value, then people are honestly going to rather just keep their money in their pocket and go look to poke their money, go park their money somewhere else. As for how easy to make $100 a month off of this, I would say if you have no audience and you're just starting off doing this, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 stars. But however, if you do have the audience built, again, maybe you have a successful YouTube channel, successful Instagram pages, whatever the case may be, I'm gonna give this a 1 out of 5 stars because if you already have that audience built, there's probably going to be a lot of people that are going to flock into that community that are really going to want to support you and really just build up that community with you. As for how sustainable this is, I think this is very sustainable, and I'm actually going to give it a 1 out of 5 stars to sustain that $100 a month. Again, because of that recurring revenue business model. As for the downside, there's two big downsides. One, you have to consistently, like I've talked about, provide value. And if you don't provide value, then honestly, your community is most likely going to fail, or it might not be the most successful venture long-term. Two, again, like I've already talked about, you need to have that audience. You need to figure out a way, you need to devise a plan, a way somehow to build up that audience. The fourth form of passive income we're gonna talk about on this list, and I think this actually might have the most upside of everything that we're going to be talking about on this list, but I also think it could arguably be the most complicated per se, and that is developing an app. So there's a lot of roadblocks when developing an app. It's not something along the lines of, say, a podcast or building a community where you can just do a few Google searches, maybe watch a couple of YouTube videos, and automatically your podcast is up and running and on Spotify, or maybe your community, your Discord chat is all ready to go. In other words, it's pretty straightforward. However, with building an app, there is a lot that goes into it, to say the least. You need to figure out how to build the app. You need to figure out how to get people to want to pay for the app. You need to figure out how to get that app in the App Store and ranked very highly in the App Store, and so much more. You also have to take into consideration the competition that's coming with your app. So you have to figure out, all right, so I'm developing this app. Why would someone want to download this app over this app? Why is my app better than this app for reasons X, Y, and Z? And you really have to devise these reasons. You really have to create a plan in order to have really a successful app, I feel like. And coming up with these reasons, coming up with this plan, in my opinion, a lot of the times from what I've seen, from the way I've seen people develop apps, from what I've heard from other people, is this can be a lot easier said than done. So in saying that, personally, I feel like getting an app up and running, getting an app off the ground and developing an app, that's going to be, in my opinion, a 5 out of 5 stars because there's just so much that goes into it. The research, the coding, getting it ranked, all those things I already talked about. There's so many things that goes into an app. It's going to be very difficult, and it's going to most likely take a very long time to get off the ground. But however, in saying that, like I mentioned before, there is a lot of upside that comes with it because unlike a YouTube channel or a podcast or maybe building that community of your already established audience, an app you don't have to be the face of. If you put an app in the App Store, no one is going to have any idea that you created it. If I put an app in the App Store and I don't put anything on any of my platforms, nothing on my Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, no one's going to know that I created it. Instead of selling your personality like a lot of the times you might do on YouTube or maybe one of those other platforms I just named, what you're actually doing is selling a product that's going to bring value in some way, shape, or form into other people's lives. And then on top of that, say one day you would like to sell the rights to that app, whatever the app is you create, you want to sell the rights to it, you're honestly probably going to get a lot more for it than you would get if you were selling the rights to your YouTube channel or something that you are the face of. Because if you walk away from whatever you are the face of and everyone knows you are the face of it, someone else might not see or might not value that company, that business, whatever you want to call it. They might not view it as having the same intrinsic value as they would an app which people have no idea who you are. But the level of difficulty I see in making $100 a month off of developing an app, I put this at a 4 out of 5 stars because it's one thing to get people to download the app, which is extremely difficult. It's another thing to get people to want to pay for that app. I know me personally, a lot of times when I go into the app store and I look at different apps or I look for a different app for whatever I'm doing, a lot of the times I don't even look at the paid ones because I know there's a good chance that I'm going to download this app, maybe use it here and there or use it a couple of times and just never go back to it again. So I don't really buy too many apps. I just end up looking for a free alternative. So you need to come up with the plan and devise a way where you need to get people to want to pay money for that app, where they feel like their money is best allocated giving you money so they can have access to that app. However, once this gets up and running and you do come up with the plan and a strategy in order to get people to pay for that app, I feel like this is very sustainable and very profitable. And I'm actually going to give that a 2 out of 5 stars once it's up and running and off the ground, because the rich get richer and compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. In other words, you're most likely going to see a snowball effect from this. The more people that buy the app, the higher that app is going to be ranked. The more people that are going to see that app, the more reviews that are going to be on that app, the more people are going to want to buy that app. As for the downsides with this, there is, like I talked about already, there is a lot that goes into it. It's not as simple as setting up a camera or setting up a mic and just pressing record. There's going to be a lot of work and a lot of research that goes into this, and chances are it could even take well over a year or several years before you even have any sort of prototype to even test, depending on what your overhead is. But I would say if you go into this with that long-term mindset that you really can build something that's going to be very successful and sustainable over the long term, maybe over 5 or 10 years, I think you can be very, very successful with this, as opposed to if you go into this looking at more of a short-term game, thinking that you're going to be wasting a year of your time. And the last and final passive income source that we're going to be talking about on this list that really I think anyone can start, and I personally never done this. I really don't have any intentions to do it, to be perfectly honest, because I feel like I just see a lot of scammy ads around it, but I have seen people have great success with it, and that is dropshipping. Basically what dropshipping is you set up your own website, then a customer places an order with you and pays you for that product. You then forward that order to your supplier and pay wholesale, since you are the middleman in this situation. The supplier then ships that product to the customer and you ultimately profit the difference. Let's give another example here. So let's say you have your own Shopify website set up and you are selling t-shirts and you're selling them for $30 total. Now let's say a customer buys one of those t-shirts for $30, like I just said. You contact your supplier sends that t-shirt to the customer for $20 and you pocket the difference, being $10. Now personally, I would give this a 1 out of 5 star rating to start, because literally anyone can go on Shopify right now and create their own website and start selling stuff. However, when you get more into like the nitty gritty and how difficult it is to make $100 a month off of this, especially when first starting, I would give it a 4 out of 5. First off, 97% of people who try drop shipping ultimately fail. And on top of that, you are competing with Papa Bezos in the e-commerce space.
Guys!
Plus, this space is very, very saturated, and ultimately there is a lot of competition out there. However, like with anything, I think once you get it up and running, and as long as you stick with it, this can absolutely be a profitable business venture. I think a lot of people who have had success with this, like Biaheza or maybe someone else, they really find 1 or 2 products that really make them and really get them off the ground, and they just take those 2 products that they're selling and they just continue to run with them. So in saying that, I would say the sustainability of this, once you get it up and running, of making $100 a month consistently, is I would probably give a 2 out of 5 stars. Because like with anything, the rich get richer. Compound interest, the 8th wonder of the world. But remember, there is a lot that goes into dropshipping. It's not as easy as I am making it sound, but at the same time, I did think it was a different side hustle that I really hadn't talked about, or a different business venture that I really had not talked about on the channel. So I thought I might as well throw it in there. But as for me personally, I do not have any plans or any desires to get into dropshipping at all. But I would say aside from developing an app, this would be the hardest one on this list to start. As for the downsides, I have kind of talked about this a little bit already. It can be hard to get off the ground, and it can be hard with all the competition in the e-commerce space. But like I said, if this is something you really like, if you believe in, absolutely go for it, because I think this can definitely be a very profitable side hustle or business venture, however you want to look at it, over the long term, as long as you stick with it. However, to summarize everything I've talked about in this video, I think all of these side hustle or business or passive income ventures, however you want to describe them, I think every single one of them can definitely be very, very successful for the right person. It all comes down to just what you prefer, what you want to pursue, and the opportunity that you want to take advantage of. The only thing that you need to do is start. That's the most important thing. If you really want one of these sources to really take off and be successful, you need to start today. And saying that, guys, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you got any value out of it, make sure to drop a like on the video. Make sure to subscribe, turn on notification bells so you don't miss any future uploads. Let me know what your favorite passive income source is down in the comments, or let me know which one you really want to start this year in 2021, and I will see you guys in the next video.